They called it a motorcycle engine, but it acted more like a missile. When the Suzuki Hayabusa launched in 1999, it didn't quietly enter the superbike scene. It tore through it like a rocket, a 1,299 cubic centimeter inline-4 that hurled riders toward 194 miles per hour, straight from the factory, over 190 horsepower in a street-legal machine. And that was just the baseline. Tuned versions? They pushed 300 horsepower, and some governments seriously considered banning it outright, because this wasn't a bike built for the rules, it was built to violate them. The Hayabusa didn't just compete in the speed wars, it ended them. It was so outrageously fast that motorcycle manufacturers worldwide came together in a secretive, unspoken deal, a gentleman's agreement, to cap all production bikes at 186 miles per hour. Not because of laws, but because Suzuki had revealed a brutal truth. That speed couldn't be trusted with human judgment. This engine wasn't just powerful, it was provocative. It dared you to twist the throttle just a little more. It made 100 miles per hour feel like second gear. It also gave ordinary riders access to performance levels once reserved for fighter jets and MotoGP champions. And here's the wild part. Anyone could buy it. No special training, no speed certification. Just walk into a dealership, sign the papers, and get handed a key to something that could outpace traffic, time, and sometimes common sense. If motorcycles like this fascinate or terrify you, hit that subscribe button. We dissect the wildest motorcycle engines ever built and the stories behind the bikes that broke every rule in the book. In today's video, we're diving into the monster that made this possible. You'll learn how it launched from zero like a jet on afterburners, why tuners and drag racers still worship it like a mechanical god, and how something this dangerous ever slipped past regulators. Was it engineering genius, corporate recklessness, or both? Either way, one fact remains. The Hayabusa engine wasn't just fast, it was too fast. Today, we're asking the question no one wants to answer. Should it have ever been street legal? Built to kill the Blackbird. To understand why the Hayabusa engine never belonged on public roads, we must rewind to the 1990s, when motorcycle brands were locked in a silent arms race. At the top of the food chain was Honda's CBR 1100XX Super Blackbird. Sleek, smooth, and capable of hitting over 180 miles per hour, it wasn't just a superbike, it was a statement, a polished symbol of Honda's engineering muscle, and for a while, it seemed untouchable. Suzuki saw that as a challenge. They didn't want to edge past Honda in a dyno battle. They wanted to humiliate them, to end the debate over who built the fastest production bike, full stop. But this wouldn't just be about specs, it would be about symbolism. The engineers called it Project W. But when it came time to name the finished machine, Suzuki chose something far more symbolic, Hayabusa. In Japanese, it means peregrine falcon. One of the fastest animals on Earth, known for diving at over 240 miles per hour. But here's the twist. Peregrine falcons prey on blackbirds. Subtle? Not even close. This was a full-on kill shot. Suzuki's mission was simple. Build the fastest production motorcycle the world had ever seen. No compromises, no apologies, just raw, relentless speed. And when the GSX 1300R Hayabusa hit the market in 1999, it did exactly that, obliterating the Super Blackbird with a top speed of 194 miles per hour and rewriting the rules of the entire industry. The Hayabusa didn't enter a class, it created one. It ignored convention, it refused limitations. It wasn't built for comfort, control, or casual Sunday rides. It was built to hit the red line, dominate the speed limit, and redefine what a street bike could be, and terrify anyone brave enough to twist the throttle. And the heart of this mission? An engine that behaved less like a power plant and more like a declaration of war. The Hayabusa wasn't Suzuki's answer to Honda. It was a targeted strike, a revenge machine with wings. And at its core, it carried a motor so aggressive that it turned a rivalry into a revolution. Engineered for speed, not sanity. Beneath the Hayabusa's futuristic curves was something far more intense than an engine. It was a power plant that didn't just flirt with the limits of performance, it obliterated them. At its core sat a 1,299 cubic centimeter inline-4 engine, liquid-cooled, dual overhead cam, and built for one purpose, unrelenting speed. On paper, it produced 173 horsepower, but that number didn't tell the full story. Thanks to its ram air system, essentially forcing more oxygen into the combustion chamber at high speed, the actual output surged when the throttle was pinned and the bike was moving. At full tilt, it was pushing closer to 190 horsepower. That kind of power, paired with a slippery aerodynamic profile, meant the Hayabusa was knocking on the door of 200 miles per hour before the industry stepped in and capped speeds at 186 under the now infamous gentleman's agreement. But top speed was only part of the problem. What really made the Hayabusa terrifying was how easily it got there. This engine wasn't just powerful, it was overbuilt and unapologetic. Suzuki threw durability at the red line, forged aluminum pistons that could take a beating at high RPMs, dual balancer shafts to tame vibrations while you screamed past 150 miles per hour, and a ram air system that made the bike stronger the faster it went. It was less about finesse and more about force, but there was a danger behind its design. There were no electronic aids, traction control, wheelie control, ride modes, or anything between your right wrist and a machine that could catapult you from 0 to arrest me in under 10 seconds. And that's when reality hit. Riders treated it like just another sport bike until they twisted the throttle and suddenly found themselves in over their heads. High-speed crashes, brutal wipeouts. The Hayabusa didn't forgive poor judgment, it punished it. It wasn't engineered for restraint, it was engineered for supremacy, even if that meant putting an unguided missile in the hands of the average rider. This wasn't just a fast bike, it was a mechanical dare, and Suzuki handed it over without hesitation. No license upgrade, no extra training, just raw, unrestricted velocity sold over the counter. The science behind illegal speed. Speed isn't just about horsepower, it's about slicing through the air. And when Suzuki built the Hayabusa, they didn't model it after a motorcycle. They modeled it after a missile. The Hayabusa's now legendary silhouette, long, rounded, and unlike anything else on two wheels, wasn't about looks. It was about physics. Every bulge, every curve, every vent was sculpted in a wind tunnel to reduce drag and stabilize the bike at insane speeds. While other sport bikes became twitchy and unpredictable past 150 miles per hour, the Hayabusa stayed locked in laser straight. At nearly 200 miles per hour, that mattered more than you think. But Suzuki didn't stop with the bodywork. They added a ram air intake system that transformed velocity into raw power. Wind was funneled directly into the airbox as the bike accelerated, increasing the oxygen supply. That led to more aggressive combustion, which, led to even more speed. It created a terrifying loop. The faster you went, the more power the engine made, and the faster you went. It was like a turbocharger that only activated when things were already getting dangerous. The faster it goes, the stronger it gets. That's not just smart engineering, it's a test of restraint. And most riders, they failed it. Here's the problem. The Hayabusa was built for straight-line dominance. Think salt flats, drag strips, runways, not downtown intersections. At 120 plus miles per hour, the most minor things, cambered pavement, a light crosswind, a slightly underinflated tire, could throw everything off. Yes, it had a long wheelbase for stability, but that same length for the uninitiated made it slow to react, clumsy in corners, and unforgiving in sudden situations. It wasn't a canyon carver, it was a straight-line sniper. The average rider didn't grasp that. They saw a street-legal bike with legendary top speed and assumed it could handle like any other sport bike. This was a big mistake, because while the Hayabusa could survive real roads, it was never truly meant for them. It was a drag strip monster in street clothes, and giving it a license plate didn't make it tame. It just made it available. The Hayabusa wasn't a rushed project. Suzuki quietly spent nearly half a decade developing it behind closed doors. Their mission was clear: build something so dominant that it would render the competition obsolete. No shortcuts, no compromises, just pure engineering warfare. They funneled millions into wind tunnel testing, borrowing facilities usually reserved for automakers and aerospace projects. Every inch of the bodywork was sculpted for function. The curves, bulges, and stretched silhouette weren't designed to look fast. It was designed to be fast in the places where speed tears bikes apart. But the real investment was inside the engine. Suzuki overbuilt everything. A reinforced engine block capable of surviving continuous redline abuse, cooling systems built to handle prolonged high-speed runs without thermal collapse, and a ram air intake tuned for maximum oxygen delivery at velocities most street bikes never dream of reaching. This wasn't a drag strip machine tuned down for the streets. It was something else entirely. A street bike with the budget and backbone of a full-blown motorsport program. But money alone doesn't make monsters. Vision does. Enter Koji Yoshiura, the man behind the Hayabusa's bold, unorthodox look. While the world chased sharp edges and sleek silhouettes, he went the opposite direction. Bulbous, aggressive, aerodynamics above all else. Critics mocked it. Riders called it ugly. But when the wind tunnel results came in and the speed numbers dropped jaws, Yoshiura was vindicated. His design didn't just work, it redefined what speed looked like. And behind the curtain? Io-san, one of the lead engineers, had already begun sketching Gen 2 before Gen 1 even hit the streets. This wasn't a one-off. This was a plan. From day one, the Hayabusa was built to evolve. to become faster, more extreme, and even more unhinged with every iteration. It wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a premeditated multi-million-dollar attack on the concept of street legal, and it hit harder than anyone expected. Too powerful to be peaceful. When a motorcycle pushes limits, it earns respect, but when it obliterates them, people start asking if it should be street legal at all. The Hayabusa didn't quietly claim the title of the world's fastest production bike. It stormed into the spotlight in 1999, and the backlash was almost instant, especially in Europe, where the idea of a nearly 200-mile-per-hour machine cruising public roads wasn't thrilling. It was terrifying. Regulators raised red flags, news outlets labeled it reckless, and other manufacturers, they panicked. Rather than face potential legislation or a global ban, the industry made a silent move, a backroom handshake that would become legend, the Gentleman's Agreement. From that moment forward, all production bikes would be electronically limited to 186 miles per hour, 300 kilometers per hour. No law required it, just a collective fear sparked by one motorcycle, the Hayabusa. But even that wasn't enough to calm the storm. In certain markets, insurance companies flat out refused to cover the Hayabusa, or they charged sky-high premiums. Some countries made registering one more difficult. And dealerships, many started turning away first-time buyers. Even Suzuki pivoted, dialing back the marketing. Less top speed king, more comfortable sport tourer. But no one was fooled. And while the surface message softened, underground builders were just getting started. And here's the wild part. This engine's story only gets crazier from here. So if this already has your gears turning, hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss what's coming next. The tuner's dream and the regulator's nightmare. If the stock Hayabusa was already a beast, the modified ones were something else entirely. To tuners, drag racers, and underground speed freaks, the Hayabusa engine wasn't just powerful, it was sacred. It was a holy grail of performance, not just respected, worshipped. Right out of the box, the Busa delivered nearly 200 horsepower, more than enough to scare even experienced riders. But that was just the starting point. Once it hit the aftermarket, things escalated fast. The Hayabusa quickly earned its place as one of the most tunable motorcycle engines ever made. Why? Because it could handle abuse most engines wouldn't survive. Turbo kits pushing it to 300 horsepower, nitrous systems for explosive quarter-mile launches, big bore kits that stretched displacement well beyond stock, reinforced transmissions, forged internals, standalone ECUs, you name it. And here's the shocking part. It stayed reliable. You had bikes hitting 8-second quarter miles, clocking 200-plus miles per hour regularly, and still running strong weekend after weekend. No rebuild, no explosions, just relentless speed. The Hayabusa didn't just become a fast bike, it became a platform, a blank canvas for people obsessed with pushing the edge of what's possible. And it didn't stay confined to motorcycles. Hayabusa engines found their way into all kinds of wild creations. Kit cars, radical track weapons, custom trikes, even go-karts with a death wish. Why? Because the engine was compact, lightweight, brutally powerful, and, crucially, hard to kill. Where other superbike engines cracked under pressure or demanded constant tuning, the Busa's power plant just kept going. It wasn't fragile. It wasn't finicky. It was accidental brilliance, an over-engineered beast that turned into a tuning legend almost by mistake. Even now, walk into any dyno shop and say the word Hayabusa, and you'll likely hear the same question. Turbo or nitrous? Because that's what this engine became. A gift to gearheads, and a machine that still lets you build street-legal insanity in your own garage. The tamed Hayabusa. In 2021, Suzuki unveiled the third generation of the Hayabusa, and at first glance, it looked like the beast had finally been leashed. Yes, the engine was still massive at 1,340 cubic centimeters, but the peak horsepower dropped slightly, from 194 to 188. To some, this looked like the end of the era. Had emissions laws finally done what regulators couldn't? Had the Speed King been declawed? Not exactly, because while Suzuki dialed back peak power, they turned the rest of the package into something far more sophisticated and more dangerous in a new way. The Gen 3 Hayabusa came equipped with a full suite of electronic wizardry: ride-by-wire throttle, multi-level traction control, launch control for optimized takeoffs, cruise control for long-haul stability, engine brake management, cornering ABS, and wheelie mitigation. This wasn't a neutered relic, it was a more intelligent, sharper predator, a weapon with a brain. Thanks to better torque delivery and refined gearing, the new Hayabusa is quicker off the line than its predecessor. It's also smoother, more planted, and easier to ride fast. And that's precisely what makes it more dangerous, because riders feel confident. Too confident. It's easier than ever to push this bike to its edge, until you disable the rider aids and twist that throttle with nothing but reflex and bravery in your favor. That's when the Hayabusa reminds you, it never forgot where it came from. It's still the heavyweight champ of top speed dominance, still unmatched in its size, stability, and presence. No other production bike offers that same cocktail of bulk, balance, and brute force. What Suzuki created in Gen 3 wasn't a housebroken Hayabusa, it was refined chaos, less like a wild animal, more like a trained assassin. And the moment you open it up on an empty highway, you will remember why the Hayabusa is feared. Even in a world ruled by emissions caps and safety software, the Busa still exists, unapologetic, unstoppable, and only pretending to behave. Not tamed, not defanged, just better at hiding its teeth. The Hayabusa engine was never meant for city streets. It broke out of a laboratory. Too fast, too extreme, too refined, and too unhinged to exist outside a controlled environment. It didn't just break speed records, it broke the industry. It forced secret handshakes between rivals, scared insurers into panic, and left regulators scrambling to define what street legal even meant. From its aerospace-inspired Ram air system to its battle-hardened internals, from 200-mile-per-hour straight-line sprints to turbocharged drag bikes, kit cars, and salt-flat monsters, the Hayabusa engine wasn't built to be practical, it was built to intimidate. And it did exactly that. It caused policy shifts, insurance blacklists, headlines, and a reputation that still echoes decades later. To this day, it lives right on the edge, between brilliant innovation and mechanical madness. Some call it reckless, others call it irresponsible. But many, they call it one of the greatest machines ever built. Because while the world tried to tame motorcycles with rules and rider aids, Suzuki built one that gave those rules the finger. So now, it's your turn. Would you ever open one up full throttle? Or do you think the Hayabusa engine should have been banned from public roads from day one? Drop your take in the comments. I'm reading every single one. And if you love machines that push the limit and break the mold, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got more insane engines and outlaw bikes in the pipeline.